Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, look at us. It is week 3, Thursday, September 19th, and we are halfway through September, and we are continuing with our Things Happen in Threes September journal, and we are just chugging right along in this wonderful month of September. So as we're going through September and we're still talking about different things God does with us in threes, we've been kind of talking about how sometimes God has to repeat himself to us because we're merely human. But I want to highlight something that Jesus does with Peter. We've been kind of talking about how he asks us things and how many times does he have to repeat himself. But there's one specific thing in John 21 verses 15 through 17 where Jesus is talking to Peter. And it's just before the resurrection. And he asks Jesus asked Peter the same question 3 times. And they're just having a conversation. And Jesus says to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Of course I love you." And Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." Peter's like, "Well, of course. No problem. I got that." A little bit of time passes, and Jesus says to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter's like, "I already answered, right?" "Of course I love you, Jesus." "Feed my sheep, Peter." Peter's like, "What's going on here? I already told you, of course I'll feed your sheep." Peter's thinking in the physical here. Of course I'm going to feed your people. Of course I'm going to go out and do this. And he's not quite understanding where Jesus is going with this. And finally, Jesus says it a 3rd time. And finally, he looks Peter in eye to eye and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" Now, Peter's getting a little bit irritated. He doesn't understand why Jesus is questioning. He's starting to think, "Jesus, do you not believe me? Is there something I've done? Is there something else?" He starts inside his own head, starts thinking, what is it, Lord? What have I done? Why don't you believe me? What's going on here? And he starts questioning himself. And Peter is a little bit upset. And he's like, "Of course I love you, Lord." And Jesus looks at him and he says, "Feed my sheep." And suddenly it occurs to Peter, he doesn't just mean in the physical feed my sheep. He means in the spiritual feed my sheep. Give them my word. Tell them the story. Go to my people. Feed my sheep my word. Not just my food, but my word. That's when Peter starts to realize that Jesus wants to give him grace, that Jesus is building up his faith, that sometimes it takes more than once, sometimes it takes more than twice, but sometimes it takes 3 times for us to be built up, for us to be given the courage to go do what he's called us to do. Sometimes we need to know that nothing that we say, nothing that we do will separate us from the word. We just have to go do all of it, not just one piece, not just part of it, but all of it. And that's why Jesus sometimes, and why God sometimes has to say it 3 times for us to fully absorb all of it. So, as we are moving forward with our Things Happen in Threes, who are those 3 people you are trying to reach out to make sure they know you love them? How are you reaching out to them today? Are you reaching out to them? Make sure they know they are not alone, that you are paying attention, that you are praying, that you are thinking, that you want to make sure they know they are not alone. All right, make sure you're writing it down over here so that you know how you're doing it and what you're doing. And then, of course, our second part of building our relationship with our Lord, and things happen in threes, is by building our knowledge of the Word. And we do that by reading it, by writing it, and applying it. So our verse for today is Ephesians 3:12. In him and through faith in him, we may approach God with freedom and with confidence. So now that we've read it, and of course it's here for you to read, please make sure that you're writing it over here. Write that. We tend to remember things better when we write it. And then down here, how does this verse apply to you? What does it mean to you? Sometimes we'll read a word and it's just a word. It doesn't have a whole lot of meaning. It's just a word and how it applies to us today. And other times it'll just be like a whole new light has applied to it, has a whole new meaning. Something in there is triggered because of things going on in our life. What was that trigger today? And then, of course, in the notes section, when you flip the page, in the month of September, we're writing good things that are happening in our life. What was something good? And, of course, for yesterday, again, it's not a big thing. It's not a miraculous miracle. Well, for me, around here, it was a miraculous miracle. Yesterday, I didn't lose internet at all. Sometimes in my area, it gets a little bit wonky, and sometimes it'll go in and out, especially if I'm in a Zoom room. But yesterday, I had full internet access, so that was a good thing. So, guys, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you again soon. Have a terrific Thursday. Bye-bye.